Okay, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and do a bishop today. You can see I made this bishop, and this is looking pretty ugly. And I want to show you guys how not to make this kind of jagged, horrible edge-looking thing happen with the Boolean modifier. There's a couple of ways around that, and so I'm going to go ahead and move over here to a new layer. I'm going to go and hit 1 on the number pad, and I will start right here. So first of all, Shift-S. I'm going to go cursor to center. Let me turn on my screencast keys. And so I will start, I'm going to extrude this, so I'm going to start with a circle, and it doesn't really, I think I'll put 36 here. It doesn't really matter so much for this part, but if I tab into edit mode, I can see that I have vertex select, not edge and not face, and so I'm ready to start extruding this. First I'll just scale it out a little bit right here, and now I'll go ahead and hit E and then Z, and move this guy straight up on the Z-axis. I'll hit E and then immediately hit S and scale that guy in. E, Z, move it up, scale it in. I'm just going to kind of roughly match the shape of this bishop edge. So keep doing this, and it will, just by hitting E, Z, and S. E, Z, S, and E, Z, and then S again. So I'm going to do this all the way up almost to the hat, and then I will, E, Z, E, Z, and then S, E, Z, and then S again. Kind of curve that in a little bit. E, S, E, Z, E, S, and now E, Z again. Oops. And so eventually I'll get up here to the top. And I should put this on time lapse so this goes quicker, but it's the same idea. Just getting E and Z to go straight up, and then S to scale it. Alright, so when I get up to the top, I'm going to want to create a space for the hat. I'll make this a little bit rounded. E, Z, and then S. Okay, so I'll go ahead and say E and then scale, close that off. And now I'm going to say Shift-S, cursor to selected. I'm going to put my hat right up here. Now I want more geometry for the hat. And so I'm going to add a new object. So tab into object mode, I'm going to add a new circle, and I want this to be a separate object for a couple of reasons I'll explain later. But I want to go ahead and scale this guy way in, and now I'm going to build this hat. I'm going to put a slightly different kind of cut in here, but what we can see is, tabbing into edit mode, try to get the round shape of this rounded hat. Okay, so I want there to be more geometry. So the reason I had those jagged edges was I didn't have quite enough geometry in my bishop. And so if I wanted to, I could add even more geometry in here by maybe putting in some loop cuts here, 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 and here, and maybe down here. So this is going to probably not look great if I look at it back in solid mode. Notice I have these edges. And so what I can do, Control L to get all my linked, and I'm going to hit smooth vertices. So if I go back up to my tools and I say smooth these vertices, let's see, that's going to be right up here, smooth vertex. I can smooth those out, and then I'll go ahead and say scale on the Z a little bit, kind of bring that guy back up. Maybe scale the whole thing out. Okay, good. So now, I think that's pretty good. Actually, these guys look like they might need to be pulled in a little bit. So I can scale these guys in, and maybe I'll scale these guys in as well. Remember, Alt select to get. Okay, so at this point I want to add my cut. And so to do that, I'm going to go back into object mode. I'm going to add a new object, and this is just going to be a cube, and I'm going to scale him on the x-axis, bring him up. I'll rotate him into position, so rotate on the y-axis, and then I'll just bring him down like this, maybe out this way. Anyway, put him where I want him. Okay. Now, if I do this, this cube only has 8 vertices. And so if I want to add more, I can simply go to W and say subdivide. I'm going to subdivide this guy a bunch. I'm going to subdivide it by, I don't know, let's try 50. Now, when I do my cut, it's going to have a lot more geometry to work with, and it will look less jagged. So let's give this guy a name. I'll call it cut cube. With my caps lock on, great. And so now I'm going to select the object that I want to cut. I'm going to go over to my modifiers. I'm going to add a Boolean modifier, and I'm going to select the cut cube, which is the object that is going to do the cutting. And then I choose difference, and I apply that. So now I can take this guy out, and I've got a nice little cut. So that's looking pretty good. The reason I want these guys to be 2 separate objects is I'm going to apply a subsurf modifier to this guy and smooth that out quite a bit. Notice I lose some of the sharpness of some of those edges, so I can come back in with this guy and I can add some of that back if I want it. For instance, if I want to have a more sharp edge there or there, I can just come back in with loop cuts and add those back in. And I think that looks pretty good. And maybe up here on top. If I want this to be kind of more sharp at the bottom, I'll just drag that down. Maybe one there, maybe one there. And I get some of that more defined edge going. So that's one reason I wanted these guys to be 2 separate objects. But there's another reason. On this guy, as soon as I add a subsurf modifier, that's when I begin to get this little jaggedness. So because I used a lot more geometry, notice if I tab into edit mode, there's so many different vertices on this guy. That's here, but I'm still getting that little edge thing going on. And so what I can do to help that out is I can just come in here and I can choose add modifier, and I can choose an edge split, and now that only gets applied to the top. So this guy gets an edge split, but the order that these get applied, I'm doing the edge split and then I'm doing the subsurf. If I change the order so that the edge split is on top just by hitting this little arrow, so sub first gets applied and then the edge split. So now I have a nice edge there, and notice that I don't have any of that edge split in this guy down on the bottom. So that's going to give me a much nicer looking bishop hat. And if I come back in here now and if I say Alt and choose this guy, Shift S, and say cursor to selected, and then I can add a sphere. So I'll go to create, add a UV sphere, shrink that guy down, bring him up. I think I wanted this guy to be a little bit bigger, but scale it just on the Z and drop him down so that guy looks fine. Okay, so that is my bishop, and now I have a nice sharp edge here. Probably want to bring this whole guy down a bit. Scale him down just a tad. Maybe scale him on the Z. Yeah. Okay. So he's all good to go. And so now this guy is good. If I want to go over here into relations, I can tab into edit mode, select all of that, and then in the UVs I can recalculate normals. And somehow those seem to have gotten flipped. Same thing with this guy. I'm going to tab into edit mode, select the whole thing, recalculate normals, and so now this guy is looking pretty good. I can add a color to each of these. Since they're 2 different objects, I think I'll take this guy and then shift select this guy, Control P, and so I'm going to parent one to the other, and now I can add whatever images I want. Let's say purple here and purple here. And now if I move this guy back, let's see what he looks like on my chessboard. If I say shift select there and say move, and then move him to the first layer, move there to the first layer, scale him way down, and so let's see what he looks like compared to my other piece. And we should see that this new piece looks quite a bit better. And so that, well, I got my light kind of on the wrong side. Let me move the light over and we will see what that looks like. So here's my lights. Let's just change the direction of the lights. Remember, the sunlight doesn't matter physically where it is, but it's just going to change the angle. So if I come back in now, okay, so now I can begin to see how these two guys look different, and it turns out this guy's going to have a nice sharp edge, and this guy, because I just used a cube with 4 or 8 vertices, I got all this jaggedness in here, but this one had a lot more, and it looks a lot better. Okay, so that's it for today. Bye-bye.